Live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Long time no hear. My name is Chris, and this is my channel. We love comics. Been an interesting week with Hurricane Helene, and won't get into that here. Maybe at the end, if the 4 or 5 people that want to care, want to hear, I'll talk about it at the end, but I'll leave it up to you guys. You could request it in the comment section if you want to hear it live. Otherwise, I'm just going to show the comics that I'm sending out to PGX. Hopefully, you are all doing well. As usual, always give full disclosure. I do not get paid by PGX. I am under no obligation or no contract was signed for me to do this. We actually basically made a handshake deal over the phone, if you can actually physically do that. In other words, I like the fact that they allow me to be able to say whatever I want to say, and I am not restricted or limited to anything other than my experience. So I've been doing this for over 7 years now, where I send in 4 comics every month. It used to be I get them graded, pressed, and dry cleaned with signature verification if needed, and graders notes on the back for free. I mean, of course, I'd have to pay the shipping, but don't get as many people as my original channel. So they wanted to continue to do it, which I always appreciate, but they charged me $50 to get them graded, which is perfectly fine with me, and I'm still very happy with the deal. They hopefully get some new viewers and people that'll try PGX. Remember, not only can they do the gradings, but they have in-house pressings and dry cleanings. They have in-house signature verification. And thanks to my idea that Daniel Patterson was kind enough to listen to, you can have grader's notes added to the back of the slab for only $5 per slab, and hopefully you'll try them out. And if you do, I want to make sure there's a deal for you guys. So if you send 10 or more books to PGX and use the code We Love Comics Free Press, you can get one of the comics pressed for free. I would highly recommend mentioning which one you would specifically like. Otherwise, they'll just pick one randomly out of the 10. And also, if you want to add graders notes to the back of the slabs, again, it's a $5 charge per slab. It's use the code We Love Comics Graders Notes and mention that on on the order form. So, with that being said, while I'm waiting for people to see me live, if you want to critique the AI art, always love to hear either your positive or negative reviews. I want to give a shout out to my Patreon members. Every single video I do, if you're one of my paid Patreon members, you get a shout out every single video I do. Once we get to 20 paid members every month, I'm going to be doing some giveaways. So hopefully we'll reach the 20 Patreon mark soon. So the faster that happens, the quicker I could start doing the giveaways for you, which, by the way, is not limited to anybody. In other words, there is no minimum other than the minimum to join anybody's Patreon, which is $2 a month. And I will mail out the items all around the world, and I will pay for the shipping. So it will cost you nothing if you win the contest. Like I said, I'll ship it out all across the world. So join patreon.com/we love comics if you want to potentially enter the contest once we get to 20 paid members and you want a shout out. If you want the shout out, normally I just do the first name and initial that's mentioned on the person that signs up for the Patreon account. But if you want me instead to mention a social network, for example, or maybe an auction site that you have, let me know at peacefulfeelings@yahoo.com. I could do that, no problem. So shout outs to our Patreon members: Carl Sith, Scott, Michael B, Kevin W, James R, Dan L, Kim N, Annabelle N, Jason B, Steve L. And then we have, if you have Facebook, check out Darth Bleak at Stephen L Turk Author. Tell him We Love Comics sent you. He wrote a book. He was kind enough to give me a signed copy and did a contest where he gave out 4 or 5 signed copies for free. It's a series of books. From what I understand, he's still completing issue 2, which hopefully I'll get a copy of. And hopefully he'll do another contest, but that's up to him. But check him out at Stephen L. Turk Author at Facebook. Also, last but not least, if you have Instagram, go check out Silver Age Surfer at @silveragesurfer_comics and tell him We Love Comics sent you. So, I'm also, here's for the contests, different tiers depending on how many people join. Again, no minimum to join the contests other than a minimum to join anybody's Patreon account, which is $2 a month. But you'll get one entry for every $2 you applied. to the Patreon account. So the more you put in, the more chances you'll get once we get to the contest. Check that out for all the different giveaways. Still looking to make my first trade with somebody, a big boy trade for Big Boy Comics. Great way to save both parties thousands of dollars, save literally hundreds of dollars in taxes, and trades are not taxable at the end of the year. So it's a great way to kind of quote unquote stick it to the man legally and make both parties happy. So if you have any of the books listed on this screen, or if you know anybody that has them, any of my books are up for grab. Worst comes to worst, if you message me about a book or toys or anything you've seen on my shelves or in previous videos, worst I could say is no. But as long as it's a fair trade, and even when it comes to the trade, if I have to give a little bit extra to get one of these key books, I don't mind doing that. But let's keep it as even as possible because I'm not going to trade an extra $2,000 worth of comics just to get one of these books as much as I'd love to have them. So let's keep it fair. Let's keep it reasonable. And let's see if we can make it happen. So let's put on the video camera. I'm going to show you the 4 books I'm going to be sending out to PGX to get graded. I always tell you the significance of the book. I always tell you the price I paid for the book and what my predictions will be for the grade. Keep in mind, like I said, PGX does in-house pressings and dry cleanings, which I recommend to anybody, no matter what company you send your books to, because sometimes like a difference between a 9.4 and a 9.6 could be, 50, $60, $100. Difference between a 9.6 and a 9.8 could be $1,000 depending on the book. So I would highly recommend for the amount that you have to pay to get a book pressed and dry cleaned, provided it has pressable defects. You could literally make 5 times, 10 times the amount of what you spent in return of value. So I highly recommend it. I do it all the time. But when I predict my grades, I base it on what I think it's going to be after pressing and dry cleaning. So if you see a book that I show you and it has a wrinkle or two, and I say it's going to be a 9.8, it's not based on what you're seeing. It's what I think it's going to be after the pressing and dry cleaning. So if you want to join my live trap, well, that's great. I do have live traps. So if you want to be trapped in here forever and have to listen to me rant on, come and join the live show. But if you want to be in the live chat, at the end of this video, I always do surprise subscriber shout outs. You don't even have to be a subscriber unless you want to hit subscribe. We appreciate your viewership regardless. If you want to hit the thumbs up or the thumbs down, I leave it up to you. And after this video, I'll be doing the 2 EGS comics I'm going to be sending out. Didn't do one last month because I didn't get any books graded back from them for months. So I wanted to kind of give them a chance to catch up, which they did because they sent all of the books I had with them back into one unboxing video. So check that out. But I always want to keep in mind that either through PGX or EGS, I'm treated a little differently than a paid customer because obviously paid customers are going to get priority. So I always want to make sure that if you see my book's not coming as fast as maybe somebody normally would, that's the reason why. So let's give a shout out to Pino. Always good to see you. Omega Collectibles. Always good to see returning faces. Well, returning names at least. Daryl Griffin is here. Paul Ferris is here. Boston Chris, long time no see. How are you, good sir? Anybody with the name Chris is okay with me. We haven't talked in centuries basically, but I hope you're doing well. Nice to see you. Looks like the hurricane didn't cause major damage, which is a good thing. Um, didn't cause major damage, but we ended up with a fairly decent leak in the house and in my comic room. But luckily, the good thing about this storm, if there was anything good about it, is that there wasn't a lot of rain. The tropical storm we had before this, we had major flooding. But this storm, and I was prepared for storming, for like a lot of rain, it didn't happen. So it kind of soaked the ceiling over here. You could see there's a big water stain, but it wasn't enough water to penetrate through. And the day after, I was able to repair the roof, knock on wood, hopefully sealing the entire roof so that doesn't happen. But we had the worst part, we have a carport, which is, if you saw the video I did in the beginning of that storm, which by the way, in the middle of that video, it just cuts off it because all of a sudden that's when the storm started getting really bad. Because I was standing outside the whole night because I was basically really protective of my cats, and I have the cats outside the carport. But there was one particular, I can't say breeze, but hurricane wind that almost lifted my carport and ripped it off. It came close because luckily my carport is secured down pretty well, but I was standing out there because I just, for some reason, I like to go outside during hurricanes and storms just to watch everything. I don't know if that's the smartest thing, but all of a sudden there was this huge gust of wind, and the carport went like this, and you heard it squeak. But the 4x4s were heavily attached to the driveway, so it didn't take off flying. But that was close. The worst part was losing power for a couple of days because if you know anything about Florida, basically we've had every day has been a minimum of 90 degrees since basically March. It's been, and with the humidity, it's about 100 to 110 almost every day since March. So when we lost power, we ended up losing power around 8 o'clock that night. And we did not have a generator. Um, it was pretty warm, and I almost basically almost died from the heat because I have asthma problems. And with that humidity and the heat with no air circulating, my lungs were closing up. So I literally had to sleep outside to not die in my bed from the heat closing my lungs. And then we ended up that morning around 3 o'clock in the morning, we still had some battery power. So like, let's do something smart. Let's order um, a generator before everybody else does. And we went to on HomeDepot.com and saw a very nice, reasonably priced generator, which I thought they'd be 2 or 3 thousand. This thing was only 800, so thank God for PayPal. But we bought it, got there at 7:30 in the morning. We were one of the first ones to order because most people probably waited until the next day. And we set up the generator and it worked for 2 hours and then stopped working. And it wasn't a reused one or, open box or anything. It was brand new and it stopped working. So at that point, after about 2 hours of it stopping working, we tried to see if we can return it, which they wouldn't let you do because they said once you put gas in it, you can't return it. And I'm like, well, how do you know if it works or not if you don't put gas in it? And it kept stopping and would not like keep its charge no matter what. And then it slowly started leaking oil, and they didn't have any more at that point. So we were stuck for a day or two with no air, no refrigeration, nothing. And I actually felt worse for the cats than myself. But we ended up, I found out we had a little tiny generator that I bought years ago that I thought was not even worth taking out of the box because of the fact that it was just so small. And it ended up, because out of desperation, we're like, let's at least hook up a fan so, I don't die in my sleep. And it ended up this little, it was only about this size. It probably weighed about 65 pounds, but you could lift it. It kind of looked like an old boombox from the 80s. But it was about 65 pounds, only held about a gallon and a half of gas. So I didn't think this thing would actually work. It actually um, worked with one of our air conditioners, two fans, and the refrigerator, and lasted 7 hours before we had to refuel it. Another fun thing that happened is that not thinking about it because I didn't want it to be out in the rain during if there was any more rain after the storm. I put it, under my carport next to the house because you also don't want somebody to steal it because like I said, 65 pounds, somebody could easily steal it. Around 4 or 5 in the morning, thank God we have a carbon monoxide detector, but it started going off because it was actually, even though it was outside, it was actually getting into the house while we were sleeping. And if we didn't have the carbon monoxide detector near our bedroom, which is purposely why I put it there, who knows if either one of us or any of our cats would be alive right now. So about 5 or 6 in the morning, we had to first air out the house, but then I had to take the generator and put it all the way in our backyard, which luckily I bought a 100-foot cable, being on a DJ. or used to being a DJ, I used to have a lot of cables and, the cables you need for things like that. So it was a very interesting time. I think I got in 3 days, I think I got about 4.5 hours of sleep. So it was, needless to say, a little stressful, but luckily, knock on wood, the house did not fly away, didn't lose any comics or anything. But it was definitely not a fun experience, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. So anybody out there in Florida, I hope you're all okay, and my love goes out, and my heart goes out to anybody, because I heard actually in four other states there was complete devastation, and knock on wood, considering what I've seen other towns have happen, we got away relatively scot-free. So we had two pretty decent leaks in our house. Window was leaking, one of the doors was leaking, almost lost the carport. Um, had to spend literally hundreds of dollars to get the roof fixed. I did it myself, coated the roof, at least half of it where the leaks were coming from, and we lost the power, which is the worst. Because like I said, with my asthma, I literally that first night almost died because I couldn't breathe with that with the humidity. So, Boston Chris, even though we haven't talked in a long time, I would love to create a dialogue with you again in the future. But even if this is the only time I ever hear from you, that was really nice of you. And sorry I got off track because I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but I appreciate the kindness. Um, Pino says you should get a solar generator. That's the ironic part. I actually have two solar panel generators, but they couldn't power the big stuff. They could only power little fans, and they lasted for 3 hours, but then you couldn't recharge them because there was no sun shining, because it was cloudy. So that's the one disadvantage of a solar generator, is unless you buy one of the $5,000 really expensive ones, they're not really going to do much. And if there's no sun, you can't recharge them. So yeah, that's why we ended up not buying a generator at first, because I'm like, yeah, I got the solar paneled ones. They weren't the bigger ones because I could never afford a $5,000 generator. But we had smaller ones, but they were only good enough to circulate fans. They weren't even powerful enough for a air conditioner, and they died after 3 hours. I had two of them, so 6 hours I was allowed. We could run one little fan, and then they were useless at that point because it was cloudy and there was no sun. So yeah, that was interesting. And Daryl says, "Hey Chris, quick question. Which one do you think is a better long-term investment? Amazing Spider-Man 300 9.0 or Batman 181 4.0 to 5.0?" Well, it depends. If Batman 181 is complete, it has to have the poster. So that's a big factor. But I'll tell you, this is just my opinion, and you're asking me. Both are great books, but these days Marvel seems to do better than DC. So you'll get most likely a better deal on Batman 181, which I can't say you will because that's actually a harder book to get complete. You can't go wrong with either one. If I had, okay, it is complete. Okay. So that's good. But long term, because Venom is going to be coming into the MCU, unless they change that, and they're not doing anything, as far as I know, with Poison Ivy at this point, with anything in the DCU, you're going to probably get a better deal to buy Batman 181, but it's going to stay. It might rise a little bit because that's such a key book, especially with it complete with the poster. But I think Amazing Spider-Man 300, um, 9.0 though. Is it a newsstand? If it's a newsstand, that's a great deal. It's a good book to have. 9.0 is kind of hard with Amazing Spider-Man 300 because it's not a rare book. I think you would really need to get a Amazing Spider-Man 300 at least a 9.6, if not a 9.8, for people to desire it. Now, if it's Amazing Spider-Man 300 newsstand, or maybe it's a book that's signed by maybe Stan Lee or Todd McFarlane, for example. But I think of the two, it's kind of even, because a 9.0 again is not that rare, especially if it's not a newsstand or anything like that, and it's not signed. Batman 181 is always going to do well, but There's nothing in a movie that's going to, bump up the price quickly. So that's more of a long-term one. But I think with Amazing Spider-Man 300, you're going to have a better short-term chance. Batman 181 would be better for a longer time hold. So I think that is the best I can give you with that. You can't go wrong with either one, but it depends on the price and it depends on what you're looking to do with it. If you're looking for a short time where you can make quicker money faster, I think the Amazing Spider-Man 300, because Venom's coming to the MCU allegedly, might have the better short term. But Batman 181 is always going to hold its value, especially when you're talking mid-grade, complete with the poster. And I think that's better long term. So hopefully that helps. Um, Kita VTC Watt says, I like Batman 181 better because it's more rare. I can understand that, but always keep in mind that, and I've seen this with so many YouTubers, rarity does not always guarantee value or dramatic price increases. But like I said, you can't go wrong with either one. So sometimes it boils down to preference. But if you base it on profitability short term, the Marvel books, there's a lot happening with Marvel movies, so you're going to get quicker returns with them for the most part for key issues that are relevant to the movies or TV shows to a lesser extent. But like books like Batman 181 are great long-term holds. They're going to keep their value steady and even probably slowly increase, but you're not going to see big bumps because, like I said, I don't see, as of now, anything where Poison Ivy is going to be relevant in any movie or TV show. So it's going to take longer for that one. So it's sometimes it's preference, but it also depends on the why you're doing it and how you're doing it. If anybody wants to agree or disagree or add their own 2 cents, please put it in the live chat. So thank you for that little bit of a conversation. I appreciate the very few people that like to listen to my opinions. And let's show the 4 comics, which is pretty much why I assume that you came here. So the 4 books that I'm sending in. This is a book I have not sent in to get graded in probably 5 or 6 years. But I think now's the time. You'll probably understand why I'm putting this one in. But this, of course, and everybody's doing it, Venom #3. This is the cover A, but it is signed by Donnie Cates. And somebody did put a certificate. It's not really a certificate of authenticity, but it doesn't matter. I have a couple of his signatures, and that looks to be pretty genuine. But like I said, PGX does um, signature verifications. This is, of course, is the first full null, which is going to be most likely probably in an end credit scene for the Sony Venom movie. But the rumors are he's going to be one of the main villains in Amazing Spider-Man 4. So, um, I can see why people would be worried about Null in the Sony movie, but knowing Sony, they're not going to use Venom. They're not going to use Null as the main villain, and I think they're just going to cameo him either at the very end of the movie or, like I said, an end credit scene. Bringing him to the MCU, he's going to get a bigger deal. So you might see a dip in between those 2 movies, which would be a buying opportunity. But I would not sell this book while Venom 3 is just coming out, and then not buy it back because I think there'll be a little dip, and then you're gonna see it rise even more once if Null ends up in the MCU. Because of course, until something happens, nothing is guaranteed. But the best one of these to get is the Venom #3 third print. I'd have to check. I believe I have at least one, if not 2 copies, graded 9.8s. I don't know if I sold them years ago when I was moving here. I got so many graded books, I would have to check. I believe I have at least one, if not both. But Venom #3 third print is the best way to go. But I spent $199 for this. I bought this years ago, and again, signed by Donnie Cates. I'm predicting this between a 9.4 and a 9.8. It is a high grade. I never guarantee a 9.8 because you never know. Page 14 could have a bend that you don't know about. And when it comes to higher grades, I don't like to open them up because any little chip, if you're opening the book and all of a sudden you bend the corner, there goes your 9.8. So a book that has a potential of 9.8, full disclosure, I never open. So if there's something like a little stain on on page 14, I'm not going to know about it. but this book was bought from somebody who bought it originally, got it signed. So the chances of something like that is going to be very rare. But that's why I always say between a 9.4 and a 9.8 with white pages. Signature verification. Definitely looking forward to that one. Next up, I have several copies of this. This book to me is a no-brainer. This one will absolutely benefit from a pressing because it has a lot of non-color break increases. This, of course, is Batman Adventures number 12, first appearance of Harley Quinn. Now, the new Joker movie is out. I've seen reviews. I'm not going to watch it because I've had plenty of people tell me it's basically nothing like the first one, and it's basically a musical. I have no desire to do that. You know how, unfortunately, they'll always ruin a good thing, especially if it comes with a strong male lead. They're going to destroy that these days. And from what I hear from the reviews, this is definitely no exception to that rule. Um, I still love Harley Quinn. This is still a popular character and absolutely a book worth having. Benefit of this one, the only one I've ever had as a newsstand variant. Now, a lot of newsstand variants I've seen of this book are in very low grade because, this book was basically made for younger audiences. So, not a lot of collectors, when this book originally came out, bought it off the shelves. I mean, there are some that did, but especially when it came to the newsstands, this is kind of like what Dead New Mutants 98 was for the first 10 years. I've seen a lot of the newsstands like a 5.0 and under. So getting higher grade newsstands is definitely rarer and absolutely something worth getting. And the way you can tell it's a newsstand, it has a barcode instead of either, I think it has either a DC logo or some wording there. If anybody knows what it is, you could put that in the comment section. But this one, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. See right there, all the way across, there's an indent. There it is. You could see it better that way. There's an indent. There's a couple of them that go across, but they do not break color. So this one, normally when I do a estimation of a pressing, I usually say, like, for example, between a 4 and a 5. This one's going to get a little bit more because it has a lot of pressable defects. And like even here, there's a bend. See that right there? You can see it. But that does not break color. As you could see, there's no white. So a lot of pressable defects. Now, this, of course, isn't going to ever be a 9.8, but it's definitely not going to be a 5.0. I paid only $214 for this book. They did sell it as a lower grade because of all of these, but because and I recommend people to get pressings and dry cleanings on their books, especially if they're getting them graded, and I know what to look for. This book is going to dramatically increase once it's been graded. That's why it does pay to have knowledge about these things and buying raw books. Notice that the majority of my purchases are raw books because I'll look them over and I'll see if there's pressable defects, because a person cannot sell a book at a higher grade based on, well, if you get it pressed and dry clean, it could be this grade. They have to sell it at what the book currently looks like. And with dramatic, so you could see it right there, all the way across, all the way to the top. And there's like 3 or 4 above it. And then the bottom, again, right there, you could see it right along here, non-pressable decreases. So this book is going to dramatically increase its value, but the seller couldn't sell it at a higher value. So to pay $214 for this book, very happy about that. I'm going to say it's going to be between a 6.5 and an 8.0, because again, with all of those pressable defects, it could be a dramatic difference in what the grade could be. And I mean, if you have a book that's going to be a 6 and it goes up to an 8, especially a key book like that, you're talking hundreds of dollars. And what will it cost you? Between $20 and $40 to get the book pressed? To go up hundreds potentially? Now, of course, it depends on who you send it to, because I've seen YouTube videos on other people's comic book channels where they send in a book to get graded from some, not a major company. Maybe they have a friend that knows how to do it, or, somebody that hasn't had a major amount of experience. And they've actually they crack open a book. Let's say, for example, the book was originally a 7.5. They send it to either a friend or somebody that may not have major experience in pressings. They send that to get graded and comes back a 7. So your grades can stay the same or they could get worse. So it depends on the grading, the person that does the pressings. And I have stood by PGX with this forever with their pressings and dry cleanings. They have never done me wrong in the 7 years, 4 books every month for 7 years. Because let's be honest, I don't care if they were free or they paid me to get my books graded. If they were to destroying my books every month, I would be pretty stupid to send them back to a company that would do that. PGX, in my humble appearance, through my experience, um, do amazing with their pressings and dry cleanings. So I'm really thinking, like I said, between a 6.5 and an 8.0 with white pages. Absolutely looking forward to seeing how that comes back. Another book you guys have seen. I've been buying these every chance I can get. Whether people agree with my purchases or not, I leave that up to you. I base it on my instincts. My instincts have pretty much kept me going all of my life, never really steered me wrong. So I'm going to continue to go with that, regardless if everybody in the comic book community said I was wrong or they'd never do it. To me, I always see that as that's great. That means I have less competition on a book that I want, and I won't have to spend more money to get it. So we have Amazing Spider-Man number 238, first appearance of the Hobgoblin. This is not only a newsstand variant, but it is a Mark Jewelers variant. I used to own 4 copies. Somebody bought one during one of my auctions months ago, so I have 3 of them left. It does have the tattoos as well, so this is a very rare book. Now, it's not, I don't know how many of these are left because, the advantages of this book over, let's say, for example, a Mark Jewelers variant of Amazing Spider-Man 252 or Amazing Spider-Man 300 or New Mutants 98 Mark Jewelers. The difference between those and this book is the fact that this book came with tattoos, and a lot of people took out those tattoos. So if you have the Mark Jewelers variant of this book and you don't have the tattoos, it's incomplete. Now, books like New Mutants 98, Amazing Spider-Man 300, 252, etc., they didn't have tattoos. So it's easier to have a complete um, variant of that book because it didn't have extra. If it was just that, I wouldn't buy these books for the prices I'm buying them for. Rumors are that Ned Leeds, the friend of Peter Parker in the MCU movies, could potentially end up becoming the Hobgoblin. I've explained numerous times of how they set that up in the last Marvel movie. I won't go over that again, but I think if it happens, this is a great book to have, especially in higher grade. Now, this one, I don't know what the grade is going to be. I paid only $336 for this book, which for a Mark Jewelers variant with the tattoos is a pretty darn good price compared to what even a regular newsstand or a regular version with tattoos of this book is going for. Now, the reason I am not going to say a grade, and I don't know what the grade will be, is if you notice, it's not completely faded, but it is faded, which means whoever owned this book, whether it was a comic book store or an individual, somebody hung this up on a wall where there was sunlight and it faded the comic. But as you can see, it's not faded to the point where it's black and white. So it's kind of like mid discoloration. So I don't know what kind of grade this would be given, because the rest of the book looks pretty darn sharp. The corners are a tiny bit rounded, but like millimeters. There are no spine ticks along the spine. Bottom corner is pointy. There's no spine roll. Staples look perfectly intact. So I would love to hear what you think this grade would come out as, but I don't honestly know. It's got off-white to white pages inside. But I do know a faded cover is not going to get a 9.8. So I don't know if this would be a 5.0 or it would be a 9.0. So it's hard to say because, like I said, everything else in this book is pretty beautiful. But it's faded, but it's not faded to the point where this is all white. Very hard to say on this. Paul says the tattoos don't affect the story. You're correct, but if you get the book graded, it's still going to be like, for example, if you sent that book without tattoos to any grading company, it's going to come back a green label qualified as incomplete. Because even if you have, I'll give you a prime example of this. If you have Edge of Spider-Verse 2, um, I don't know if they have it in the other print, so let's just assume the first print. It came with a like 1 inch by 1 inch little, I think, sticker or whatever it was. It was one of those where you can claim some discount or some prize or something. I forget what it is, but that one little 1 inch by 1 inch add-on, if you don't have it in there, it's actually incomplete. So you're correct that it will not affect the story, but it still will not be complete. So it depends, like, because there are going to be people that collect comics that, well, let's put it this way. If you had Amazing Spider-Man number 238 and you had the money to spend on a graded version for investment purposes, would you rather have it complete with the tattoos or not? It's the same thing like the Batman 181. The poster does not affect the story, but it's incomplete if it doesn't have it. So that's more of a preference, but you will absolutely not be able to sell that book for a higher price, even though it doesn't affect the story. So that's more of a personal preference, though. Let's see. Um, Let me just zoom in a little bit because I'm getting old and my vision is not what it used to be. Lucky me. Let's see. Luke says, love Batman Adventure 12, Bruce Timm artwork. Absolutely. For a kid's comic, basically, the artwork and the coloring, it pops out. And I think that's why that's very attractive. That book is very attractive. Plus Harley Quinn's first appearance. I mean, it's also she's on the cover, which dramatically helps, but the coloring of that book is beautiful. Let's see. Paul Ferris says, I hate that Marvel put in tattoos meant to be used, and now grading companies decide it's incomplete without. But it is. I understand. It's the same thing with the Marvel value stamps. The Marvel value stamp is like a 1 inch by 1 inch stamp that people had to cut out to send to Marvel. Well, actually, no, they couldn't even redeem them for anything. What they did was, which is the weirdest part about it is, they called them Marvel value stamps, but they were not sticky like a stamp. They were just on a piece of paper, and all they did was they sold a different stamp book that you could buy so you can cut out the stamps and basically tape into this other little book. So it's not like you could redeem them for a discount or a free comic or anything. But if you cut out that 1 inch by 1 inch little Marvel value stamp out of many Bronze Age books, like, for example, Hulk 181, it does not affect the story, but it's going to be incomplete. But it does make sense. If you buy something that has 10 things that are included in it, and you lose one of those things, even if it's not significant, it's going to lose its value because it's incomplete. So I can understand that that may bother you, and I can understand that, and I'm sure many people would agree, but it is what it is. So all grading companies are going to do it, and they're not wrong for doing it because it is incomplete. It came with tattoos. If somebody took them out, it's not complete. So that will lower the desirability. And there will be people that if you send it in, for example, if you send in Amazing Spider-Man number 238 to CGC, just for example, without the tattoos, it's going to come back with a green label that says incomplete, tattoos removed. That book is not going to sell even at a higher grade as expensive as a one with the books. So let's say, for example, you have a 9.6 Amazing Spider-Man 238 with no tattoos, and you have an Amazing Spider-Man 238 with a 9.2 with the tattoos. you'll probably sell the 9.2 before it and probably make more money. So I can understand why you don't like it, but it is what it is, and you can't change that. And most people are going to respectfully disagree with what you're saying, but it is incomplete. So let's see, Paul Ferris, I know I just don't agree. Nothing wrong with that. Everybody has the right to their opinion. And if you well, let's put it this way. It doesn't affect the story. You can get it cheaper that way. And if you're buying it just to read it, then yeah, the tattoos, the Marvel value stamps, the posters mean diddly squat. But when you're talking about investors and collectors who want complete things that they buy, I mean, nobody wants to buy a jigsaw puzzle that has, you know, 9,999 pieces of a 10,000 piece puzzle. It's just you're going to spend less. So if you're somebody that's just buying it to read it or just buy it to say, I have it, you're going to spend less money. But also, if you ever sell it, you're going to sell it for less money. That's kind of just how it's going to go. Pino says, I remember seeing that book on eBay. I hesitated on purchasing it. I'm sure many people did. I've had a couple of people say they were interested in some of the books that I bought, but hesitated. Me, I trust my instincts. I don't hesitate. As they say, he who hesitates. But I mean, if you're hesitating, there's usually a reason for it. So I always say, good, bad, or indifferent, trust your instincts because you never know. It might be something that can have value 3, 4 years from now. But God forbid you spent, let's say, $500 on the book, and the next day something happened where you needed $500 and now you don't have it. So if you trust your instincts and your instincts make you hesitate, there's probably a reason for it. So never regret something that you didn't do because you can't change it anyway. Um, and just believe that you listen to your instincts, and there's always a reason why. Pina says, oh, yeah, I just read that. Paul says, I get it, but it's so superficial. You're not wrong. It's absolutely superficial. But like, for example, I know plenty of YouTubers that will never buy a CGC 9.8 if it's off-white pages and they need white pages. There are some people that will have a house where if you walk in, you have to take off your shoes, you have to put a coaster under your drink, everything has to be immaculate, everything has to be perfectly placed in its place. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just preference. But I'm sure if anybody that's watching this has watched any majority of time of comic book channels on YouTube, you'll know there are people, and they have the right to do it, where it has to be a 9.8 with white pages, otherwise they won't touch it. Now, what's the difference between a 9.8 with white pages and, let's say, for example, a 9.8 with off-white to white pages? I mean, the amount of the difference, especially in a graded book that you can't open, is so small that it shouldn't matter at all. But to some people, that's a deal breaker. So, superficial can happen in many different ways with many different things. It basically boils down to a personal preference. And what I say is, even if everybody disagreed with what you said, doesn't mean you're wrong. Because whatever works for you, whatever makes you happy, whatever allows you to acquire the things that you want, that are what you feel satisfied with, you're never wrong. So, um, there are going to be some people that need to have everything perfect. Many people may not care about that. Like me, I don't care if I have a coverless 0.5 of a key book. I mean, I'll show you right here. This is an Amazing Spider-Man #1. It's coverless with a facsimile cover. It's missing the last 2 pages, but does not affect the story. But I own Amazing Spider-Man #1. Yeah, it's a .3, but I only paid $464 for the book. You could buy a page of this book for $500 alone. So how many people would have never touched that? Like I've done videos talking about these books. I have a Fantastic Four #1, a CGC .5 with a facsimile front cover and the wrong back cover. I think also has glue, or I'm not sure. It might have one other thing I don't remember. And most people thought I was crazy for that. But again, I paid, I think, like $454 for that book. There's always money to be made, but as long as you're happy, never really care about what anybody else thinks. Paul Ferris says, yeah, that's crazy about page quality. But there are people out there, and I guarantee you, Paul, have you ever seen somebody's video where they talk about they cannot have a 9.8 if it does not have straight white pages? You know, what if they got so particular that they have to have only tens? Depending on what could be potentially an OCD or just a preference, you know, very rare are you going to get something that's absolutely perfect. Because I mean, you can have a 9.8 with white pages and there's a little scratch on the case. So what do? Sometimes you just got to be like, you know what? Be happy with what you own. As you can see here, here's a 2.0. Very happy with it. I got a 0.3. I got a 4.0, a 3.5, a 9.8. I even have some 9.9s and 10.0s. I'm happy with whatever book I have, regardless. I don't care about the color, but that doesn't mean that somebody else that does need that doesn't mean they're wrong or crazy, just different. So, as they say, to each their own. Paul Ferris says, not saying they're wrong at all. It's quirky, but that's what makes us different and unique. Well said. John Wayne's 45. I don't think I've ever seen you here before, but welcome. Says, I also had a chance to get a qualified X-Men 12 for 400, 7.0. Great score. Missing one page. CGC 7.0 is going for 1,800, and you were able to get it for 400. I think I missed out. I mean, that's a big difference. For one page, let's put it this way. If I had the opportunity to get that book and I knew that book at a 7.0 was 1,800 and I could get it for 400, I would have probably bought it. If it was me, I would have contacted the person and said, would you take 250, 300 for it and see what they say. But when you're talking that much of a drop for one page, I might even consider that. So it's really hard to say, but you're talking, X-Men Adventures, X-Men Adventures, X-Men 12 is the first appearance of Juggernaut. Yeah, that's a key book. So I don't know. It's never regret what you chose not to do, but if that was me, I might have done it. I mean, not for nothing, you could buy like a 0.5 or a coverless copy, rip out a page and put it in. Yes, it would be a married book, but it would be complete. And you could probably get that for dirt cheap and probably spend less than that to get a full one. But if it was something like a CGC 7.0 for 1,800 and the other one with a missing page was 1,000, even though it's $800 off, I wouldn't have touched it. But for 400, that's an interesting one. All right, so last but not least, and like I said, after this, I'll be shutting this one down, and I'll be putting my two EGS books in another video. So it won't be continued from this video. This one will be shut down, and then probably a minute and a half later, as I set it up, I'm going to start the EGS video. So hopefully you guys will check that out. We got some great comments in here. I've seen a lot more people commenting lately, and I really appreciate that, and especially with the hurricane and the stress and the lack of sleep I've had the past couple of days and not having any access to do anything and being in that heat for almost 24 hours before we got a working generator, which ironically we had all along. It was Agatha all along. I really appreciate the conversations. But here's the last book. I showed this one a couple of videos ago. To me, this one was a no-brainer. Many people said they wouldn't have touched it, but then again, all of these books you see here, when I bought those, everybody thought I was crazy. So I really don't worry about what other people say. They could be right on their own end, but I go based on what I think. So this is X-Men number 109. This is not only a newsstand variant, but this is a Mark Julas variant, which, by the way, if you go on eBay right now, type in X-Men 109 Mark Julas variant. You know how many you'll find? Now, I didn't check today, so somebody might have listed one today, so I could be wrong. But if you look this up, you will see 0 of them for sale. And if you look up X-Men 109 Mark Julas variant sold books, you'll see one, and that is this one. So I don't know how many of these are in existence, but I have yet to find another one for sale. Now, even if you were to find one of these for sale, there's even more of an advantage to this book. Because as you can see, there is some writing on this book. Now, of course, there's no COA, but I have both of these people's signatures, and you could pretty much, I guarantee you, if you collect comics without me saying in the live chat right now, or you could pause this video later if you're watching it later on, how many of you know just by this signature who that is? So before I mention who the signature is, let's see the people that have been collecting long enough, especially signed books, to know whose signature that is. So this is X-Men 109, which is the first appearance of I forget his name because they changed it. I keep forgetting it. But they changed it, but he was the leader of Alpha Flight. Whether, the X-Men are coming to the MCU, whether they use characters from Alpha Flight, who knows? But remember, Wolverine is Canadian. Deadpool has a Canadian actor. I don't remember if Deadpool originally comes from Canada or not, so if somebody wants to mention it, they can. But you never know. There might be an appearance of this character in an X-Men movie. But I love this cover. Let's see if anybody, a Vindicator, so good job of that. But I remember he had his original name and then they changed it. Um, but it's his first appearance and it's before the first appearance of Alpha Flight. But let's see, I'll give another minute and see if anybody knows whose signature that is just by looking at it. And that's the thing about why I tell people, make sure you know what you're doing. Because as soon as I saw this book and I saw this, even though it doesn't have a COA and even though it's not graded, I knew who that signature was. Yes, and Pino also puts Guardian. That's what, which one's the newest one? If you remember. But since no one mentioned it, this is Chris Claremont's signature. And also, right here, which I don't have many signatures of. And what I've also noticed is this is John Byrne. If you actually look up a John Byrne signature on X-Men, he always signs it this way across the X. It's hard when the camera makes it go backwards. So he actually, when he has the opportunity to sign an X-Men book, and there's very few of them, he signs it this way. Most of his signatures, because he's old school, most of John Byrne's signatures tend to be on the front cover. Not front cover, the first page inside the book. So to have X-Men 109, first appearance of the Vindicator / Guardian, who was the leader of the Alpha Flight, which did not debut until the cameo in X-Men 120 and full appearance on X-Men 121. Not only is this a Mark Jewelers variant, which, by the way, remember, Mark Jewelers variants are about 5 to 7% of a total print run. Now, this book was printed in the late 70s, I believe around 76, 77, 1975, so I was close. So there's going to be harder to get these, even especially in higher grades, but to also have it dual signed. This is I don't know if it's a one of a kind, but it's absolutely a rare book. Because like I said, if you look up X-Men 109 Mark Jewelers on eBay right now, unless something is posted in the past day or two, there were none for sale. And if you look at sold books as a Mark Jewelers variant, you'll see one sale, and that's this book. So I paid, this person originally wanted, I think, either $850 or $875 for this book. And I made an offer of $500, which he turned down. I messaged him after a couple of days and said, if you change your mind, let me know. And he said, I'm getting higher offers and all this other stuff. And I said, that's great. I hope you sell it. And I wish you great success. But if for some reason the person backs out or changes their mind or whatever, or you change your mind, you can contact me. Tried after he relisted it one other time. Person still said no. So I pretty much gave up on it at that point. A week later, after he had to relist it again, he contacted me with an offer of like $700. And I said, as nice as this book is, in my opinion, I think an ungraded book where I would have to verify the signatures, even though they look legit to me, there's still always the risk. I said the best I can do is 500. If you're interested, I'll pay right now. And they said, oh, was it 450? Yeah, it was 450. I made an offer. It wasn't 500. It was 450. But he said, "Can you do 475?" And I said, "Well, the reason I don't feel comfortable with that is because you have to pay eBay taxes and shipping costs and blah blah blah." This person ended up having me do a deal off of eBay, free shipping for $475. To me, for a very rare, possibly one of a kind Mark Jules variant dual signed for under $500 was worth it to me. It's not super high grade, but it's not low grade either. I'm predicting between a 7.0 and an 8.5 with off-white pages. And again, the reason I have a wider range than normal is it has a couple of pressable, non-color breaking defects. So even if this came back a 7.0, I think I will be very happy with this book. If you can find X-Men 109 Mark Jules variant, in my opinion, I mean, unless somebody wants $1,000 for it, which is ridiculous, unless it's a 9.8 that's already graded, pick it up. Because, like I said, if you look right now on eBay, you will not find any for sale, and only one has been sold, and that one I owned. Brian says, "Hey, Chris jumped in late." Well, as they say, better late than never. So welcome, and I'm going to be doing my EGS video right after this. So at least you know I'm going to do that right after, so you could be early for that one. So those are the four books. So let's just go over them really quick, and then we'll do the EGS right after this. Again, it will be in a separate video. So Venom number 3, possible between a 9.4 and a 9.8, signed by Donny Cates, first appearance of Null. Again, Venom 3 third print is the one that's most desirable, but I don't have any that need grading right now. Batman Adventures 12, first appearance of Harley Quinn, with not a Mark Jules, but a newsstand variant, which is pretty rare for this book, especially when you're talking higher than a 5.0. Amazing Spider-Man 238. This is a Mark Jules variant. The only time I'm not going to be able to predict a grade because I don't know what the grade would be on this book because it's partially faded. Somebody had this on their either in a comic book store or their home, and the sun was shining on it, and at least they were smart enough to take it away before it bleached it completely. But again, I don't know what grade this would come out as. I'm curious to see. And then last but not least, the one that I just showed, X-Men 109, Mark Jules variant, dual sign, Chris Claremont and John Byrne, first appearance of the Vindicator / Guardian. So those are the four books. I'd love to hear what you think about these. Again, if you send 10 books to PGX and use the code We Love Comics free press, you can get one of them pressed for free. So I put information in the live chat. It's also in the description of this and every video. Check my descriptions if you haven't done it, because there's a lot of discount codes that I offer that I never even talk about. And I even have, like, for example, mystery boxes, a link to my mystery box website that I sell mystery boxes, and anywhere from a a $25 mystery box up to a $5,000 mystery box. So hopefully you'll check those out. So let's do today's surprise subscriber shout out. But before I do, I want to thank everybody that took the time to hit the thumbs down or the thumbs up button. I'll leave that up to you to decide which one you want to do. If you want to critique my AI art, I would love to hear it. Again, if you want to join my Patreon, go to patreon.com/we love comics, and you can get your name shouted out in every single video. And once we get to 20 paid members, we're going to be doing some contests. No minimum to join, but you get one entry in the contest for every $2 you put in to patreon.com/we love comics. And again, I'm looking to get some trades done. So if you have any of these books, please contact me. Let's each party save thousands of dollars of money we may or may not have to spend, because trades don't require money other than mailing them. And also, you're saving literally hundreds of dollars in taxes, and you don't have to report trades as taxable income. So you could save money there as well. So let's give our surprise subscriber shout outs. We're going to go with number 1, Since I have not heard from him in forever, forever, ever. And if you know what that's from, put that in the comments section. First shout out is going to go to Boston Chris Comics. He used to be one of my regulars on my old channel. We fell off for some reason. I don't know why. Him and I have never had an argument, at least as far as I know. I always thought he was a good guy. That's why I always welcomed him on my show all the time. So, Boston Chris, if you're still here, you're welcome here anytime. And I hope you're doing well as well. But surprise subscriber shout out number 2. We're going to go with Maury Kios PA. Says, I bought a CGC 5.0 Batman 181 a year before COVID for 425, sold it at the height of the comic boom for almost 1200. That's one heck of a deal. So congratulations on that. Very smart. Now the best part is you could probably buy it back for probably about 5 or 600. So that's an example of how you can use a little bit amount of money to turn around and make a bigger amount of money and end up buying other books and maybe either upgrade or keep finding deals to where you could literally take a small amount of money and be able to end up in the end with very expensive books without having to spend a lot of money because you're upgrading and you're doing things like what he did or she, I don't want to assume, with their Batman 181. So that's great. So congratulations. So both of you are today's surprise subscriber shout outs, which means if you're still here, first of all, congratulations listening to me for so long. You're one of my either power viewers or ultra power viewers. And if you are, proudly put that in the comment section. But if you have a YouTube channel, like I know Boston Chris does, once this video uploads, you could put in the comment section a link to either your YouTube channel or to a specific video that you do. If you don't have a YouTube channel or you'd prefer to do a link to one of your social networks, you can do that instead. Or if you'd prefer to put a link to maybe something you sell on Amazon, Etsy, Instagram Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace, etc., and you want to do a link to a sale, no problem. Does not have to be comic book related, but that's going to do best here. But it does have to be suitable for all audiences. In other words, I'm not going to promote a prank channel. I'm not going to promote a channel that abuses animals or glorifies the abuse of animals. I'm not going to promote somebody that sells adult entertainment. So it has to be suitable for all audiences. So when you place a link into the comment section, you will not see it right away because it will automatically go to spam. This keeps spammers and trolls from putting inappropriate links onto my channel. So I have to verify, and I will verify any link before I ever accept it. So if you see a link on my channel, first of all, browse the comment section, and if you see a link, it means it has been approved. Go check them out. Go show the community what communities are all about. They're not about insults and hatred and division and narcissism. It's supposed to be about guidance and help and love and support. That's at least what I try and make my channel out to be. So if you see a link from one of our surprise subscriber shout outs, go check them out. Tell them We Love Comics sent you, and let's show the people what a real community is all about. So shout out to our shout outs, and thank you to everybody that participated in the live chat. Great conversation. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Your thumbs up will show you did. Your thumbs down will say that I need improvement, which is perfectly fine. If you think I need improvement, why not put in the comment section what you think can be done? And if your comment is, Chris, you talk too much, hey, I'm Irish, I'm a Sicilian Italian. I grew up almost all of my life in New York, and I'm a Scorpio. You couldn't shut me up if you duct taped my mouth shut. So that one's never going to change. So thank you to the power viewers, ultra power viewers, and regular viewers, even if it's your first time. I really appreciate you. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, it is not you. It is not I. It is We Love Comics. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm going to stop this video in about another minute, minute and a half. You'll see another video uploaded in a new one, so you'll have to refresh my page for the 2 EGS comics. So hopefully you'll check that out. And until then, don't forget to have your trolls spayed or neutered. See you in a few minutes, everybody. And for everybody